All right, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is our May 21st public hearing for our proposed meals tax, 1% increase, and proposed budget for fiscal 2019-2020. If I could have a roll call, please.
Bannon.
Here.
Blake.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Edwards. Here. Vassos. Here. Jay.
Great. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everyone. Our first item on our agenda is about our public hearings, but before we go into opening for citizens' comment, we're going to do a presentation by our treasurer. Roberto, if you'd like to start.
Good evening, Council. Today's presentation is, I'm going to start with the budget. The presentation we have here today will talk a little bit more about the two exhibits. During the work session, I was asked to show a scenario of a meals tax increase of 1%, how it would look on a budget. As you can see on the highlights of the presentation, Exhibit A, which is just the original budget that I had drafted, I had shown the council on the work session, that showed an increase of an increase of percentage of 11.2%, which was attributed to a lot of the capital improvements. This year we are going to move forward with the new VDOT project, the Jefferson Sidewalk project. That's going to be $500,000. As you can see, the total budget there overall it's $2,964,726. $750,000 of that is a capital improvement money. That includes the Blight, the Town Center project, and the Jefferson Street project. In this budget, $300,000 of it is going to be pulled from the reserves. It's earmarked. The Exhibit B was the one that I was asked to create, which would show a 1% meals increase. This actually brought up the overall budget to a 17.2% increase. Nothing changed on the capital budget side. Still the $750,000 for the same projects. The total budget on this one though would be $3,124,726. The reserves will still be the same of $300,000. Both these budgets were also showing a flat tax rate, meaning that we would continue using the current tax rate of 0.146. Both budgets, the priorities of both budgets are the same as last year, going off from last year, a few changes. To continue the current level of service for resident services with a focus on improving efficiencies and service delivery. These two budgets also address the funding of professional police department that is community oriented, retaining qualified administrative staff and diverse skills, making Haymarket a more walkable community. Also, on this next fiscal year, we're working on continuing the work of the installing of the community park playground and enhancements, further enhancements we are hoping to do. Both budgets also address the VDOT project, and the only difference on the Exhibit B is that the meals tax would actually, if raised, that scenario, the amount increase of the revenue side, on the revenue side would be about 160 is what we're estimating. And on the expenditure side, it would be used for the debt service to pursue retaining a loan for the building project, the town center project. It would also, we created a line item that would have $67,000 for any contingencies or closing costs to secure a loan. Both budgets are very lean. Like I said, the Exhibit B, the main difference is to secure a loan, be able to secure a new debt service for this town center project, which is a capital improvement. If there's any questions, I'd be more happy to answer at this time.
I have one question. Right now, how many properties have we blighted? Have we issued blight letters to? Across the street, which has been taken care of?
Three total. Yes.
3 total?
3 total.
Working on the outstanding 2 letters.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I apologize for that, Councilman Shannon, but we also do have that line item, continue to have that line item for blight properties. Even though we have movement going on across the street, we do have some other ones that we still hope to address in the coming year.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe you can just expand on that for your latest inspections that you'll be bringing to the council, I believe, next month.
So when we, I think, sat down over a year ago and we came up with a list, I believe it was actually our previous council, we came up with a list of blighted properties to start addressing. I did work on one there at the firehouse and the bungalow. A letter's been sent, the public notices were put in the paper for the appropriate amount of time, and then they had a certain timeline they needed to respond in. I've not received any adequate feedback or any correspondence with the property owner that they're willing to work with us. So I will be reaching out again with another letter and pictures, but on June 3rd at our regular town council meeting, I would like to present a plan to the council with our next courses of action and how we would use the blight money to address the issues. So that's what we originally set it aside for, is that once we send these letters, if nothing is done, the council can come up with a plan to take action.
Okay, thank you.
You have more on the presentation? I'd see more exhibits and stuff.
The following was just pie charts, just a visual to show where the operating revenue would be coming from with both exhibits. I believe we did this last year just to have a more visual of where the money's going and coming from. Like I stated earlier, the main difference on the 2 scenarios is that on Exhibit B, you will see an increase on the meals tax. This is an estimate, once again, of $830 from what we currently have data from. On the expenditure side, you could see that the debt service would be where we would place the funds and also put some in another line item called closing and construction contingencies, because we do have bids for this town center project. It's just depending on getting the funds to move forward with it, if that's the decision.
Okay. And for a couple of council members that weren't here for yesterday, I know that we had some more discussion about the meals tax, even though it wasn't, we were talking about real estate, but let's, maybe if we can expand on that as well. I know you've done some research, and for some of us it's a repeat, but for the others and listening here, so.
Yeah, so yesterday we discussed over the real estate tax, being that the suggestion on both budgets were to keep it the same at .146. That would show an increase of $6,591 from last year. With that being said, overall, it did some data analysis, and it showed that overall, for the year from last year, town residents would be paying on an average of $27 and some change. I went even further to go through certain streets, breaking it down, and there's some properties that actually would benefit. There's a range from saving $17 to, and while others, newer properties, say the Blight and some Green Hill and some of the newer neighborhoods, could see an increase up to 97. The average number, though, is around $27, $30 from last year's for town residents. These amounts derive from the county assessments. Once again, it's that's where we get our assessments from them. As far, I know last night the discussion was about equalizing or maybe reducing it. I have not worked out that data, but I believe Councilman leak. They do some work on to show what it would be to do a decrease. And it seemed to, the decrease, I believe, was a .126 on real estate. So that was up for discussion as well.
And just some new developments too. Since we put together this original budget, we were happy to report that we do have a 5-year commitment to the upstairs of 2,000 square feet, which is almost close to 3/4 of the space upstairs where it's been vacant for a while. That's the church that's actually moving from the old bank building and now has moved upstairs. So there's approximately 33,000-ish.
About 32 and some change, but
Yeah,
yeah.
32,000
a year annually, yeah.
That is the new revenue that we didn't have in our numbers that we can now at least put to a book. And it literally will start with this next budget season next month. So that's an important thing. I think also, Roberto, you brought up some important things about other localities, about makes us unique in the town, and maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so there are other localities, our neighborhood localities, Middleburg and Warrenton. The real estate tax for the town residents of Haymarket, they only do pay a real estate tax annually, meaning that Warrenton and a few other localities, actually, the residents there would pay a water and sewers tax, personal property tax, and an annual VCAL registration fee that we actually, as a town, only charge once, meaning for us it would be the decals. It's a one-time fee of $15 for the town here, but those registrations in other localities are actually $25 annually. So that's one thing that we do save the residents, that if they were to live on the other townships, they don't have to worry about paying, other than the real estate tax.
And I think there's also one other tax that we waive, just for FYI, is our business tangible property that the county charges, and we do not. We've always put a waiver on that we've never put an assessment to it. So and I think also a point to mention too is our B-poll taxes too for certain things are much less than the county. So someone doing business in the town actually could be saving money by having their business headquartered here, or depending on which business we're speaking of, because it's different rates for different items, but yeah. More questions for Roberto?
No, sure. Not for me.
Yeah, I think that we hit on all the things I was just trying to remember from last night, just to kind of reiterate. The meals tax also, there's an organization, I think the Weldon Institute, that does taxes throughout the Commonwealth, takes a foot or fingerprint of them each year. In 2018 was the last one that was done. Out of that, all the towns in the Commonwealth, the meals has a average of 5.1, I believe was quoted in that for the average meal rate. And of course, doesn't include the Virginia sales tax that then goes on top of that as well. So
Actually, I could add that too. Out of 109 town localities, 40 of them have a meals tax rate of 4.1 to 5%. So the discussion I know is coming up with the meals tax of increasing from 4% to 5%. Just to give you an idea, within the towns, this report has actually stated that 40 towns within Virginia actually do have between a 4.1 to 5% meals tax.
But
So-
are those towns relative to our size
that's just all the
and our
towns.
budget?
They just give it as a town, they break it as town, city, county, so that's the information I can get as of now.
So obviously it's a percentage, so if we're a small locality and doing 100,000 versus 100 million, the numbers are relevant to the percentage. So
I get that, but I'm just saying, towns our size have a smaller budget. I mean, we don't have all the public works, I mean, we do have some, but not the vast majority of a bigger populous town. That was my point.
Yep. So with that, maybe we'll go with any other questions or comments, and then we'll open it up for our public hearing. So go around the dice here. Any thoughts? Okay, with no objection, then I'm going to go ahead and open our public hearing for both our meals tax increase and our proposed budget. For a public hearing, there again, if you can just state your name and address for the record, and I'll go ahead and open it up.
Good evening, Council. Joe Passanello, 6895 Track Court. It's budget season again. I think you'll have to excuse me. I'm a little bit tired today. I didn't get much of an opportunity to read through this, rather cursory, but a lot of good work has been done. I will say that. I think the problem here is that you guys aren't ready. You don't know what you're doing. I watched the event last night. I watched that discussion. It was a good discussion. There was a lot of give and take, a lot of back and forth. But I don't think you're ready for raising the taxes any more than they have to be. I don't think you need to raise the real estate tax. I know mine has gone up 14.5% in the county just this year. I think you guys talked about that last night. I know it's been up roughly 60% since we've moved here, and I think with the town it's been closer to 45 to 50% since we've moved here, and that was 2011. So we're becoming more and more reliant on taxes and fees, and I think we really need to take a look at expenditures as well. I'm not sure how closely you're looking at those, but I think the big thing for you is you need a plan. I think you really do need a 5-year plan. It was nice to hear the discussion about maybe eliminating the taxes, but of course, nothing's happened with the development yet, and it looks like it's going to be delayed quite a bit. You can't count on those sources of revenue until they start to come in. You shouldn't make any projections. So I just want to read a couple notes, my handwritten notes. I apologize if it's a bit of a stream of consciousness here, but I wanted to just quickly go through a couple of things. I think your plan should be rooted in your comp plan. Whatever you're going to do going forward has to be rooted in your comprehensive plan, which is outdated and unfinished, and it's updating. Now, I saw you had $40,000, I believe, in the Planning Commission. That's good. Really, before I think you do anything going forward, you really should talk to your people. Your people should review your comp plan, give them the opportunity to weigh in. I think that's where you start. This comp plan is what, 11 years old? I'm not even sure anymore, but it's way outdated. And I think some of the development's going to get ahead of what people really want in this town, and that is low taxes, smart development, elimination of the real estate tax. And I'm glad somebody raised that issue, because I remember 5 years ago talking about that when my first term on council, and that is whoever came up with the 5-year plan, that's a good idea. You should work towards that. And hold off on any major development until you have that revenue stream coming in from the other developments down at the fairground and wherever else things are going in. So one question I have is, did you really consider what's happening within the state and the county, what you call, I guess, the government ecosystem, in trying to determine these increases in taxes? Frankly, we're in year 11 in the cycle, the business cycle right now. I think it'll continue. It's a good thing, I hope. But are we really making plans for the downturn when it comes? It's inevitable, and depending on whether it's a soft landing or a hard landing, it's coming. And I think you really need to think about that when developing the budget, and make sure you're planning for the future, the future-proof, any investments you make, and to make sure that we're not cutting where we don't really want to cut. So, just a couple of points I wanted to make. On the website, as of today, I didn't see the public hearing notice. I did notice that April 22nd was the last one, and that's fine, I understand it. You put it in the paper, that's, that was your requirement, you met that requirement legally, but you talk about in your priorities about better communication with your citizens and residents. I think you really need to take a hard look at a communications plan. It's not working. Facebook isn't everything. We really need to reach out to your folks. So I just want to go through, and by the way, I think that kind of sows a little bit of confusion in the public's mind that maybe they already thought the public hearing was gone and they're not aware of it tonight, because not everybody does Facebook. So just something to think about. So I looked at the general property taxes, and frankly, since 2017, my calculation is that it's gone up 31%. Okay? Okay. It's going up 31%. Core inflation, which strips out energy and food because of the volatility, is running about 6% in the same time period. 31% versus 6%. To me, that's imbalanced, and it's not fair to the taxpayers in town. And by the way, I didn't see anything in here for a town manager. I mean, I'm not sure where we're heading. It seems like we're going backwards with respect to having a professional staff. I mean, I understand that our town clerk is assuming some of those duties, but I think we need an independent professional who can help you analyze things and help you plan things going forward. Now, the 1% meals tax nets you about, I think, if I'm correct, $160,000. My question to Roberto, can answer at any time, or maybe later. How was that calculated? Did that number, I mean, I'm sure it's a conservative number, but did it take into account price elasticities and the demand curve, which will probably shift due to the price increases in town for our restaurants? These are just some of the things that we ought to take into consideration. And I guess, make the point again, Exhibit A, that budget is up 11%. Exhibit B, 17%. That's pretty large, as far as I'm concerned. I understand you want to make some of these investments, but again, you're not ready to make those decisions. You've got a lot of options out there. Frankly, I think you should liquidate some of the assets that we have. The business of government shouldn't be business. The business should be governing and making sure quality of life is improved for our citizens. So that's my opinion on that. I say keep the rates the way they are. So I looked at another little minor thing. It says under Exhibit A and Exhibit B that there's no increase in real estate tax. Well, there's no increase in the real estate tax rate. I think you should say it more clearly so people understand it, because there is an increase in taxes, without question. Just a point of information. So just some final thoughts about the budget. I think one of the biggest areas of concern for the budget going forward, and this is no knock to our PD because I think they do a great job, but when you look at their salary increases since 2011, no 2010, it's up about 180%. Now, I understand we wanted to bring them up to a certain level and make sure that they were paid for the professional services that they deserve, putting their lives on the line. But we've got to control those costs as well, like the vehicles, the take-home, the fuel costs associated with that. So I have a concern about that, because the total PD line is up 184%. Now, the good spot is the admin salaries, that's down. But why is that? Frankly, that's because we don't have a town manager, and we did a RIF, reduction in force, and eliminated that position. That was Denise Andrews. So frankly, if we're going to get a town manager, we've got to think about finding the money to do that. And I think you really need a town manager. So just a few more things. Frankly, you got to get real public input. It's unfortunate nobody's here tonight. I guess it's either apathy or maybe they think everybody's doing a great job, but I'm not sure. I think apathy is more than the reason right now. So get real public input, finish your comp plan, please. That's something I think that's your Bible, that's your path forward. That tells you what your future's going to be. And with an outdated comp plan, I don't think it makes a lot of sense because it's not really connected to any strategy whatsoever right now. Do the analysis on capital expenditures and how to pay for those, including cost benefit, opportunity costs. Consider a host of options and weed them down, almost like doing an EIS. Include asset liquidation. I think that's critical, again. And don't forget the operating costs. We seem to fail to look at operating costs when we do any analyses. And I think you have to stop employing personal preference and do the homework because the devil's in the details. People need to know, what are we spending our money on? I know you want to improve communication, but you got a long way to go because I don't think people really understand it. And again, it may be apathy, I'm not sure. So, in order to make informed decisions, I think you've got to do the details and share that with the public. This will give you time. I think if you really step back, it'll give you time. Now, I know, this has been a long time coming. We've got to fix this building because, we want to make sure we're doing what we hold everybody else to do. I get that, but I'm not sure the time is right. Yes, maybe you can do some mitigation, short-term community mitigation, painting, roofing, whatever. But you're going to have to find the money somewhere, and not just from the taxpayers. So I think you really need to look at your expenditures again and negotiate with the county. I think, and I know I'm going over.
Yeah, we're about 10 minutes into this.
Okay, but there isn't anybody else here to talk.
I understand,
so I
and that's
think
the
you
reason
guys
why
can
I
find-
didn't cut you off at 5 minutes, but I just wanted
Okay.
to let you know.
Well, I'll make sure on June 3rd, I'll keep it to 5.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do 2.5. I really think we have to think about duplicative services with the county. I'm hearing that there's going to be a Western PD satellite maybe coming. Who knows? Not sure what the plans are. We've got to really think about what it is we're doing, what services we're providing, and who's best to do it. Maybe we don't need as many people to do all the services, if in fact there is going to be one. I'm not sure. So we've got to really take a look at that. We've got to offload some of those costs that they're charging us. That's not right. That's not right that we pay additional costs to the county for communication, for computers. We're already paying taxes to the county at an exorbitant rate. So anyway, I appreciate the fact that you listened to me here tonight. You guys did a good job developing the budget, but you got, I think, a little bit more to do, and you really got to think about what you want to do going forward. Plan it out before you raise these taxes. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your comments, sir. Would anybody else like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and, with no objection, we're going to close our public hearing. All right, we've heard comments for the past 2 days. I think we've actually had an email or two as well that for people that wanted to comment on these. So with that, we have our agenda item as discussion. As we spoke yesterday, there's trying to get a consensus of, we've taken a project for the last 1, 2, 3, almost 4 councils to make this the government center. As it evolved, we've spent money in getting drawings made up as we went through different town managers throughout the years and throughout the different council sessions. They made internal changes to it where we came up to spend forward to, I think, last year at this time, if not after the election, that we decided that maybe we did not need everything that we were being told by staff. So we reduced it even further to say that, hey, this is a working interior. There's really no reason to spend more design time to change this, because every time we change the design, it goes back to drawings, which affects the heating, the electrical, the air conditioning. So we then came, I think, with a plan as we came up into the fall of this year to say, hey, look, we definitely need to do something to the outside. The inside pretty much would be okay, with exception some ADA and handicap and maybe making the one entrance idea. So we went to drawings. Of course, we don't know how much it's going to cost until we get proposals. We finalized the drawings. We got the proposals in the fall. We only had one responded, if I remember correctly. We sent it back out during the winter, spring this year, January, sent it back out, and I think we got a good 4 bids. 2 of them, I think, were right within the number that we needed to know how much is this going to cost us. We're at approximately $960-ish thousand, plus, as Councilman Leak brought out, closing cost on the loan. So we were looking at almost $1.something million just for the renovations. We spin it forward as we go through this process, and we looked at different avenues of, as we heard public comments, and looked at, is this something that we want to then put the town indebted for $1 million or $1 million plus for the renovations? And as discussion has come out, I think we've seen, I'm not sure a total shift, but at least some other ideas that are presented, I think by Robert and different people here on the dais, that maybe we can do something a little bit different, even though we've gone down this road. And not to say that we did spend bad money, but the design could at any point take it back out and rebid it and do it down the road, maybe not go into debt for this particular project. As we know, we spent or set aside $200,000 for this building, that it was not really earmarked for one specific purpose in our last budget that we have the ability to spend. Some of the thoughts on the dais of possibly doing that. Is it possible that we could rewrap, change the roof, bring the appearance to a little bit more appealing as we go to the back of the building, where we have 2 businesses that are conducting, and as the people drive by to only look at the back of our building, that's definitely in pretty bad shape. We've also looked at this meals tax to be able to see what could we do with that money. As we originally, I think, looked at this as earmarking it for the project to spend, but as we kind of heard some discussion, maybe that hasn't, maybe that's not the road that we want to go down to. But without having everyone's input to see where we would like to go, that's up to now. So I think as we look through our different things, I kind of put these in categories of the real estate tax. Obviously, we're at a position where we have not increased it. We kept it the same, but obviously there's a net effect because of our home values have gone up. That will have that increase. And I think at some point in time, everybody's going to move out of the town of Haymarket, and I'm glad that our property values have increased over years. That's, for a lot of people, that's their retirement. That's money that as we pay these taxes each year, our price of our home does increase. It's nice to know that a single family in Green Hill that started out at $179, $189, and $199 is now, approaching upwards of $400,000 to low $500,000. So we have the real estate to look at, we have the meals tax to look at, we have the new debt, whether or not yes or no. And then if we do the meals, what do we do with those funds? Do we eliminate the current debt, which, as we were passed out the sheets yesterday, we're paying these payments, and there's might be a way of actually paying these off even faster and earlier as the money's come in or not. So with that, I think I'll open it up to discussion and just see what you can kind of focus on those 5 or 6 items, and maybe then we can gear this towards approving a budget, or whether or not, and there again, we have to keep in mind too that we did have some new revenue that did come upstairs. That's that alone is a would almost be in years past, to equalize the tax rate. It used to be about $30,000, if I remember right, 28, that to equalize to in years past. So there's almost an equalization, or, obviously, we did have a lot of money that we put in for maintenance and repairs that we've been working off of this budget, that we should come close to getting all the repairs done that we said we would do off of last year's budget. This is effectively this year. So with that, Councilman Day, your thoughts?
Yes, I am opposed to being too close to the microphone, and I am also opposed to any and all tax increases. However, if we are to raise the meals tax, then I would like to use those to reduce the real estate taxes for our citizens. I think that the funds should be used towards, again, reducing the real estate taxes with the goal of eventually eliminating the real estate taxes at some point in the future. Should be the long-term goal, as well as using the extra funds from the meals tax to pay off our current debt faster. There should be more than enough funds to do both. There should be enough funds to pay down reduce the real estate tax and pay off the higher interest rate portion of our $1 million loan. It's broken up into 3 categories. Should be enough to pay that one off that has the higher interest rate, which would increase, once you do that, that would increase our annual income from that as well. And, I also would support the idea of doing an exterior remodeling, which would, in place of doing the $1 million, taking out the $1 million loan, to do the full-fledged remodeling of the building. I think that would be something we should get some bids on, get some numbers on, and take a look at that and see if that would be a direction that we should go. I would also like to point out one other thing. It was, the comments earlier was that other towns have certain interest rate, they charge this, they charge that, this is the, and I just want to share, my honest thoughts on that is that, we don't live in those towns, and I don't have any say on how to lower the interest rates or the tax rates there, but I do live in the town of Haymarket, and I do care about the citizens here. If we have the ability to, ultimately lower or eliminate the real estate tax, and in a few years, if all these other projects come on, reduce the meals tax back to the 4% after these projects are completed, then that's what we should do. We live in the town of Haymarket, not in these other towns, and my focus is on making the town of Haymarket better than all of those other towns. So those are my comments.
Okay. Councilman Cavazos.
I do not support a real estate tax increase. I do support the meals tax increase, just like we discussed during our budget meeting, and I asked Roberto about the last time that we had an increase in meals tax, and I think he said it was 10 years. Am I right?
Well, we've never actually had an increase.
We've
Okay.
never had an increase.
It's only,
So-
we adopted it, but it was adopted at 4%.
So I don't think that's unreasonable, and I think that my passion in this town has always been maintaining and renovating our buildings and preserving them, and so I do think that working on this building is super important. It's something that we've talked about a lot. We've spent and invested a lot of time and money into having those plans made, and so I would like to see that completed in the near future.
Okay. And just for clarification, the real estate, so you're more for the equalization, reducing it? Because you said you weren't in favor of increasing it. Of course, like an equalization where we're actually bringing it down to what the people currently paid like last year.
So you bring the rate down, so your tax bill would stay the same.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, great. And any comments about the reducing of debt? I'm just kind of putting names to each thing.
Those are all my comments.
Right, okay. Vice Mayor.
Few quick things. Almost a year ago, we were elected. We all sat around, we had a meeting, and we set out our goals. It was to bring the police department up. We did that before budget time. And the other two things were the blight and to do this building. Those were our top three priorities when we sat around that table. One is done. We're working on the blight, and now this building. When I first got elected to council back in the early 2000s,
2008.
late 2000s, there were even talks then of doing a government center. This has been going on for most of the time that I've lived in this town. This isn't just this plan that's been drawn up. There's been an enormous amount of money spent over the years and time with different plans and going here and going there, and every 2 years when a new council comes in, it gets thrown out the window and we start all over again. If I had the time, I should go back and add up all the money that's been wasted, all the taxpayers' money. We probably could pay cash for this building. So I think that we should keep the tax rate the same. And the only way that I'm in favor of raising the meals tax is if that money is completely dedicated to debt service, this building, and the park. And that's it. It's not going to get rolled into all this other crazy stuff that comes up. I think it needs to be spent for what it was intended.
And there again, I apologize, I just want to make sure, so I'm trying to take notes here. So for clarification, to go ahead and go into the note of the $1 million, but specifically, the new note obviously would be for the renovation and for the park.
Well, no, this building right now, we're not going to do the park yet.
Right.
But as the funds are available, then we move to the park. It's this building.
Okay. All right. All right.
I like to have a tax rate, property tax rate is still the same. Mill tax, 1% increase. Government center, we want to put a siding, roof, maintenance, back there, maintenance, front side, repair. Then reduce our debt, whatever we have, whatever from the mill tax comes, that money, reduce our debt.
Okay.
That's the money.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to, I guess we'll start off with the real estate tax as opening discussion. In those regards, again, we've kind of had this lump of money dropped in our lap per se, and instead of seeing this lump of money that is just dropped in our lap and saying where can we spend it, my take on the matter is let's give it back to the people, and that's where my consideration of dropping the tax rate from a 0.146 down to a 0.126 comes into play. If we're not going to give the money back, where are we going to put it? Just because we have money does not mean that we need to spend the money. Getting spending under control is one major thing. Not saying that we're out of control on the spending side of things, but we have this money that has come in. We have the 32 and change from upstairs. In my calculations, I didn't see the rental rate increase on some of these leases. I feel like we have an additional revenue coming in on our rentals due to our rate escalations that are built into our leases. And thirdly, I feel that our meals tax is under calculated. If we look at our actual for 2018, we were at 671 and change. If we look at what we budgeted for 2019, we budgeted less than that, which was 650, yet our trend is showing 675, so we'll surpass 2018. And then in fiscal year, what we're proposing here for 2020, we have to forget that we may have forgotten that we have a new restaurant that has already opened, one that is going through site plan phase, and one that is going through permitting for construction phase. So granted, I would say the construction would be completed here probably most likely by summertime. So that would definitely be up and rolling for at least 3/4 of the year. The site plan phase, maybe not, maybe takes a bit longer due to the timing there. But I sincerely think that we would be around the 685 number for our meals tax, which would be an additional 15. So you take the 15, the 32, and the 7, we're at roughly 54,000 additional revenue. By my calculations, based off what, after you remove the tax exempt folks from the real estate tax, it's only to be able to reduce the rate to a 0.126, we need $44,677.47. Well, we have the money. Instead of sending that money elsewhere, let's give the money back to the folks, reduce the rate since we have the ability to do so, instead of spending that money. The additional revenue from that, the roughly 9,000 and change, I would like to see that going into continuing education. I know we scrapped that from the ARB and the Planning Commission. I know we still have some newer members on the ARB and Planning Commission. I would like to put that money back into the continuing education. I think investing money within our boards as well as our town administration is key to success. Continuing knowledge within my professional career, we have to do continuing education every 2 years. And that's something that's key to be able to keep up with trends that are going on state and national levels. And I think that it's key to invest back into our boards to make sure that they're kept up to date. So I'd like to add that money in. That's roughly $32.50 if we add that back into the Planning Commission, as well as
3,250.
3,250, and that's in both the Planning Commission and the Architectural Review Board, and that goes to continuing education, mileage allowance, and meals and lodging makes up that amount. So then you have about $5,700 left over to where I would be open for discussion on where to earmark that from. My take on it is that we could sustain it this year by reducing the rate. We could then sustain it next year by reducing the rate again by another. I think that Councilman Day came up with a great idea to go ahead and reduce it completely, and we worked together a little bit to go ahead and work some numbers. And looking at the numbers and the pamphlets that I handed out yesterday showing the decrease over a 5-year, granted, yes, at some point to get it fully down, we're going to either need to remove spending from somewhere else within our budget, or we would need to raise the meals tax, or we would have to have some sort of development come on to go ahead and give us an increase on one of our line items, which would be both real estate due to buildings being built, and whether it be a hotel with occupancy tax or whether it be more restaurants with meals tax, but somewhere we would have to have an additional boost to go ahead and sustain it. But, and this doesn't mean, I mean, this is up to future councils on if they want to continue the deduction. I'm not sure that all of us will be here in 5 years, or if any of us will be here in 5 years. But I think it's great for us to be able to put in motion a plan today. My biggest thing is we could sustain it this budget cycle with the additional revenue that's in here. So why not give it back to the folks? Why find a place to spend it on? Why not give it back and go ahead and reduce the rate since we can? Not equalize it, but go ahead and reduce it overall. In regards to the meals tax, I went ahead and, as I stated yesterday, I probably eat in town probably about 4 or 5 times that for lunch. So I went ahead and made a little breakdown to show people, because as we stated, everything's in the details in regards to everything's down in the details in regards to what does it actually mean. So I went around to my favorite meals at most places and all the restaurants that I could think of in town, and what is the physical difference? Obviously, you have the price of the item, you have our current 4%, you have our then 5%, what the difference is. And then for plain devil's advocate, I'm not married, I don't have children. This doesn't necessarily mean that it would be the same for a family of 4, so I just went ahead and multiplied it for a family of 4 there to be able to take a look at that. With that being said, as you can see, the biggest increase is about 9 cents on my steak and cheese from Eli's and Giuseppe's. And that being there, I mean, that's less than 10 cents. So if someone were to say, Connor, are you going to go drive across 29 to another restaurant to not pay that 10 cents, or are you going to take the convenience factor of being in town? I'm going to take the convenience factor all day, every day of being in town there. Same thing on a family level. If a family says, hey, are we going to go to the Subway here in town, or are we going to drive to Dominion Valley? Well, I don't think that for the 40 cents, 38 cents, it's going to make sense to drive all the way to Dominion Valley over those 38 cents. Now, granted, that's just my personal opinion on the matter. That doesn't mean that's rule of law. But in those regards to the meals tax, I hope everyone does realize that when we go to take a vote on both the real estate tax and the meals tax, we make those votes prior to allocating the funds within the budget. It's not backwards. We don't go ahead and set the budget and then go ahead and vote on those tax rates, which would then, depending on which way the vote went, it'd be a little bit harder. So I know that a lot of folks up here, including myself, are stating that, hey, look, this is what my plan would be for the meals tax, but unfortunately, we're going to have to set that meals tax rate prior to deciding where those funds go. To make it public on where I would like to see the funds go, I would like to see the funds go to 3 separate issues. One, continued reduction of the real estate tax. I would like to eliminate that altogether over the next 5 years. The second, I would like to puff up our reserves a little bit. Yes, we have our 30% restricted reserves, which we carry, on each budget cycle of our budget. And then we have unrestricted reserves, which roughly right now, me and Roberto looked into the numbers, and I think it was roughly $544,000 and change. Now, granted, out of that 544 and change, we are earmarking 250 of that, or excuse me, 300 of that out. 250 goes to the pedestrian improvement, and 50,000 is going back to Blight. Granted, we will get that 250 back from the VDOT project because we have to put the full amount up before they go ahead and get that back. But it never hurts to have money in the bank in case we don't know how the economy is going to go. And we always want to make sure that we do have reserves in there, even though we have on top of that 30%. And then lastly, I would like to go ahead and pay down our debt service. In my opinion, I don't think we should go out, and the way that I look at it is I'm not going to go take out another credit card to go pay for something that I want. In my opinion, let's pay down the debt that we currently have. Let's get aggressive on it, whether that means we're making a 2-fold payment, a 1.5-fold on it, whatever it means. I think that we should get aggressive with paying off the debt and then making the decision on taking out a new bond. Don't get me wrong, I think that, and I ran on getting this government center up and going and changed. But at the same time, it's if we went to the taxpayers and said, hey, look, we have the ability to give you a reduction in your real estate tax and put money in your pocket, or we can go ahead and take out another loan and earmark that money towards paying for a new bond or a new credit card, however you want to look at it. In my opinion, with some of the folks, and again, I haven't spoken to everybody in the town, but for the most of the folks I've spoken to, it's been, no, I'd rather have the money in my pocket. I think a great point was brought up this evening by a resident in regards to looking at some of the assets we have on hand and liquidating. This is something that is not new to you all. I've brought this up before, especially since we've had offers to purchase properties of the town. I know one of the major concerns is making sure that we don't, that building doesn't get torn down, or how do we know what's going to happen to that building, since some of these buildings are historic within the town, and we did put money in. As Bond most likely knows, because she's in real estate as well, there's something called a deed restriction. You can restrict different things within the deed, including up to demolition of a building, as well as putting covenants on those deeds that run with the property. So if that was one of our concerns, we would then be able to put that within the deed to ensure the building not to be demolished future on, or restrict what type of construction can be put on the actual physical building itself. But as we're looking at it, we need to realize, well, where are we going to get the money to fund the projects? And with that being said, I don't think it should come down to the real estate tax. I would be in favor of that meals tax there. Granted, like I said, we're going to have to obviously adopt that prior to allocating where funds are going to go and which line item they're going to go to. But overall, it's looking at this and saying that I don't think we should take out another loan. I think we should pay down the current loan we have, put money into reserves, as well as continue to get rid of our real estate tax. Now, granted, as developments come, and it may not be now, it may be in 3 years, 5 years, it may never come, we don't know. We don't know what the developers' ideas are. As we look out across the street and we see demolition happening, it's great to know that hopefully a developer will come in and want to develop on that property. Not knowing what they're going to be wanting to put on there, we don't know. All we know is that it's based off what our zoning is. Until those folks actually start breaking dirt, and even though they have some have an approved site plan, until they start breaking dirt and we see footers being poured, I don't think, as I stated yesterday, we should allocate for those funds coming into the physical budget. As you look at some of the handouts I did yesterday, most of those do not allocate for those funds coming in from other restaurants. I gave examples of what different restaurants could bring into a town, or fast food restaurants would bring into a town. But those numbers are not allocated based off of a physical increase due to any of those developments coming in, because that's just something that is unknown and we don't know about. Hopefully I answered all your questions. If not, I can.
Yeah, I think you did. As I went down the list here of trying to organize our thoughts here, and we'll listen to Councilman Shannon now.
Sweet tea, mozzarella sticks, small ice cream, turkey footlong, 8-count nuggets. How do you stay so slim eating this kind of stuff? This is good stuff, and I carry it right here. That's impressive of what, because I've wondered just on an average meal what a 1% tax increase for meals would bring us. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I mean, I'm concentrating on the meals tax and the personal property tax. First of all, I have to agree with Vice Mayor. We have talked about, and I've only been on between the council and the planning commission, being appointed the last council, elected on this one, being on the planning commission, and being the liaison. We talked about this, I know, for over 2 years. And as the Vice Mayor said, I know it's been in conversation for many years. I am fully in support of upgrading this building, the outside and all, provided we have funds and we do it the right way. I will state up front, I have to agree with, I believe it was Councilwoman Cavazos on the real estate tax, to no increase or even decrease it, as Councilman Leak pointed out, so that we do not increase this year the total amount that we paid last year. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I am for the mills tax as long as that money is used for the building upgrade, if we do move forward with that, and second, for the park. That park is important. I truly believe is important to this town. I still hear, as I'm out talking to parents and everything, to me that park is very important. We talk about, let me jump back to this building. Every time you start changing plans, you know, we need to get a plan and stick with it. We've had modifications and everything, I believe, and every time you modify, it costs money, a lot of money. Something else that you know, I've really been counting on the Crossroads project going forward. I really have, because I'm thinking, man, that's a big project. That's going to bring this town a lot of money. It's going to help reduce or eliminate personal property tax, as far as I'm concerned, for this town, and what it's going to do for us. But I will tell you, as our citizens spoke tonight, you can't count on that. We don't know when it's going to happen. And I agree with Councilman Leak. Till we start seeing footers poured, leases signed and everything, I will no longer count on that. I'm not even going to consider it, because we don't know what we don't know. And I've used that term before, and I'll continue using it. We don't know when that project's going to go forward.
And I apologize for interrupting, but I just want to make sure it's very clear. None of our budgets none of our planning has ever,
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying,
Has
that's
never
my way of
even put-
thinking.
right.
I've made comments before.
Yeah.
Once this gets done, these are the things I'd like to see as far as reducing taxes in our town and everything.
Great.
And so I understand that our budget has not.
has
I-
no
I agree
impact
that
on the
wholeheartedly.
Meladon project or going forward.
You know, and tonight, we talked about this before, and I've not really been in favor of it, haven't given it a lot of thought, to liquidate a couple of these buildings. Do we do that and take that money and do what we want to do with this building? So we don't even have to take out a loan? I mean, I don't know if that's an option or not. I don't know enough about that. I know a little bit about what we're getting for this building annually, and quite honestly, it's, you know, something that it's sustaining over the years, so we know we have that income coming in. Obviously, if we liquidate, we sell that money don't come in, we get it all at once. So just in closing, I'm not opposed to the 1% mill increase, as long as that money is used for this building and that park. And I am opposed to any real estate hikes at all.
Okay, let me give you some of my thoughts. Obviously, it's about compromise. I honestly believe, I think we can hit all these areas, with the exception that the loan, going into debt for the $1 million in loan and getting the total as it was designed might be for a later date. I think as we looked in the past few days now, just being able to, perhaps, I remember one of the residents is like, my gosh, can you at least paint the thing? Well, yeah, let's look at that. What if we did paint the exterior, put new shutters on it? Basically did the plan, but did not do the interior design work. That we replaced the roof, maybe not with the redesign of the roof, but if we did reside just residing this building. So is it possible to do that? And maybe is it possible to do it with our current monies that we have earmarked? And just doing some rough numbers, I think we could be able to replace the roof, paint the outside, put the shutters on, do the vinyl siding, all within half of the amount that we already have earmarked for this budget for the $200,000. So spend $100,000. Now, does it give us everything? No, it doesn't give us the interior design. The amount of money that it was spent was because we were looking at metal roofs, the redoing of all the windows in the front. The costs, I think, were pretty much driven on a lot of these factors that maybe we could live with that, at least until the point that a project like the Meladon comes in, where it's a game-changing project, where we now have doubled our meals increase. We have a transit occupancy that is a six-figure number that's coming in. So that is a 3 to probably 5 year plan for that actually happening. So could we be able to do everything? Is it possible that we could reduce the real estate tax, have the meals tax in there, reduce our debt, which then, as we see, these are real numbers that we're paying twice a year to pay off this debt. It was originally $2.5 million, 1.25 on this property, 1.25 for the park. So those are capital improvements that yes, you could look at this meals tax could actually be paying down this capital without going into a new debt of over $1 million. So as I guess before our next meeting, it's compiling all our comments here and seeing if there's a common denominator of being able to go with a reduced real estate, increase the meals. The new debt, I think, might be a 3-3. It's my numbers were correct. A 3-3 split on that. Yeah. So I think, as we continue with our discussion as far as.
Just to be clear, you flipped the other way.
Not that I flipped. I'm trying to, as I said,
Clear.
compromise. Is there a compromise? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say,
Take the $44,000 that Connor wants to give back to the residents, that's $20 a household, and pay the $44,000, pay off the debt. Pay that down.
Rob,
You're talking about paying down debt.
Well, we could look at that. We could also look at the fact that we have 200,000 earmarked for this building. We could use that for the debt. But I think as we all agreed, we wanted this building to change. It doesn't, as we got it, the picture back there, it's not something we're proud of. But is it something that we can maybe make, at least finish one of the aspects of it? We would have had to site it anyway. We would have done the siding anyway. We would have done at least half the roof, maybe not the way that we originally intended, but not to say that that would be spending bad money to do, at least re-roof the building.
It is spending money because it's a completely different design. You have an approved design. It went through the process. We had architects, we had engineers, we had everybody draw up the plans. We spent all this money, and now you're talking about just putting a Band-Aid on it, which is wasting money.
It is, and then eventually, if in, 5 or even 10 years, if they do decide to go through with the capital improvement for the exterior, then all that money that they just spent to, just make it a little bit prettier, that goes to waste too. And then the other thing I do want to say about, since it's been brought up a couple of times tonight about our assets and liquidating our assets, we are a historic town, and we are so lucky that we do own the few buildings that we do, and that we can protect them and preserve them, like the museum. If we start selling them, the same exact thing that happened across the street is going to happen to these older buildings, because people just don't see the value in them. If anything, eventually, I would like to see us, like I mentioned before, purchase more of the older buildings, like Madison Corner Shops and the house next to it. So for us to even think about letting these go, to me, is just unthinkable.
Right. So I guess it comes down to the fundamental question, is what is the government for? Is the government, we do not do well at leasing and doing buildings. No government does.
I think
I
we're
mean,
doing,
we should have our.
okay.
Well, I would beg to differ, because I think, as I look over to staff, the day-to-day maintenance and repairs on buildings is almost a full-time person to handle that. The leasing, just the leasing aspect of doing this. The maintenance, as we just saw, we had a repair
If it's
yesterday.
a staffing issue and it's too much, then we do need to look at getting a town
Well,
manager.
I think it's a bigger picture. Is this what government's for? Is the government for?
It's not just about government, though, to me. To me, it's that we are a historic town, and we have historic buildings, and we need to protect them and preserve them. If we don't own them, it's almost impossible to do, as we can see with everything that's happened in our town, with all of the demolitions that just took place.
But that's why we have the other boards. We have the ARBs to protect, and they should be.
There's only so much that we can do if we don't own
I
them.
don't think owning them is the answer.
I do.
mean, I would totally disagree with you that.
Real estate is the best investment that you can make.
But I don't see it as being our functioning job of doing that. And I would agree
just
that I think
disagree.
the idea of having these other buildings, we've had offers, we have 3 functioning. I don't think anybody's idea would we ever to sell the museum. I don't think that's in plan.
I don't think we should sell any of them.
But the other 3 buildings, just because we bought them, 10 years ago, doesn't mean that we have to keep them. They're an asset.
We should.
Well,
I guess my question is, because I understand where Council Lady Cavazos is coming from, and I appreciate the historic value, but who's paying to keep those buildings? If we keep them, if they're ours, who's really paying for the upkeep of those? Is it not the citizens with the taxes that we're charging and everything?
Maybe we should look at how much the leases are, and maybe that's a question of when future properties come in, like the Melodon property, and as our town is growing, maybe we should look at how
Could
much.
you increase or
Yeah,
whatever?
because, realistically, if the lease was enough to cover the maintenance, then it wouldn't be an issue for the town. It wouldn't be digging into our account. It would just be part of that expense, so I think we should look at that.
I think also it's something that we fail to look at is the condition of our buildings that we actually even lease. These are not condition A, you're probably condition C of buildings. And of course, the rental rate that we get, I think, is fair from what we're renting each room out for. But there again, it's a fundamental issue with me. Is government supposed to be renting buildings, or owning buildings, or purchasing buildings? You know, and I would just disagree with that. I think it's brought by some of the citizens as well, that we don't do it well. We don't make, you know, when we looked at even just rehabbing the 2 buildings that we did own, I mean, people say, well, what was the plan? Well, the plan is to replace the roof and fix the siding and then rent it out. So we, you know, but then how long of a plan would that take? Well, at the time, we were looking at probably a 7 to 10 year track record to, if we were to rent it out, that we would recoup our money in 7 to 10 years. And we're probably right on spot for at least one of the buildings to get that investment that we had. But to say that we should keep it, I would think that would
If you want
be
to
everyone.
sell a building, sell this one back here. Don't sell a historic property.
Well, that's
You gotta get an offer.
the ones I'm talking about are the,
Got to market it.
Well, you have to agree on that it's an asset that you don't want to have. I mean, but as it's been pointed out, the rent alone on some of these properties is a nice, as you see our income, you can't get the $2.9 million income with just having the real estate at, you know, $400,000 and meals at $700,000. There are other incomes that equal this budget, and one of those is the rental income. I pointed it out the other night. We had almost, I think it was $1 million in rental income that we've received over, since tracking different leases. Is that correct?
Yes, I can't remember which leases we're looking at. I believe the
We added
2
them all
buildings
up.
in the behind. Yeah, we added them up.
Yeah, so some people were critical that hey, you know, why, what is the plan with these things? Well, it was to rent them out, and we have done that, and we have received money for it. So,
I think that the future is so bright for our town, and I don't think that we should just think of how things are right now, because it's about to get even more and more growth surrounding our town and in our town, with the development across the street, with the development at Meladon, with the new neighborhood next to Haymarket Elementary, which is outside of our town, but is going to bring so many more people to our town. So although right now the lease might not be as much as you would like it to be or what we need to sustain, I think that it's going to go up. And I think that that money could be used to put back into the buildings.
so I'm just still.
But I think we're getting like sidetracked right now.
Well, no,
But I
it's-
don't think that just because a few people in this room think one way or the other, there's a lot more people in town that have an opinion about whether the building should be kept or sold.
Okay. Well, of course, that would have its own process as well. I mean, if it's a majority agreement that the dice here that to go ahead and liquidate some of these assets, then we do the process. We put it out for the public opinion. We go for that. But my concern is buying other buildings or going into debt, that $1 million. When it's possible, maybe we can have a compromise here of getting the look that we, maybe not the total look we wanted, but at least to bring it up to a more pleasant look. Yeah.
What buildings do we own? These 2 back here, the museum and this.
Washington Street
real
Realty
estate, those-
Building,
Yeah.
correct,
Park.
And what?
and the park.
Oh, in the park.
Yep. Yeah.
My,
So-
you know, these 2 buildings back here, I got to tell you, Mayor, when I walked back there that day, and first of all, it's going back to this building, looking at the back of this building, it's embarrassing.
It's horrible.
It is absolutely, reminds me of other sections within the county that are not very pretty and pretty run down. But those 2 buildings, are either one of them considered historic?
That one.
That one over there is. Okay. And then, of course, the museum, and then the,
Washington Street Realty Building.
they are.
Old post office more referred to.
My concern is, at what point do we, and I'm not saying liquidate, although I'm really not in favor of purchasing new places, or new, older places and everything. I kind of agree that I don't think it's our business to be in real estate, but at the same time, we want to do what we can to keep the historic value of this town. It's very
You can
important.
incentivize those properties. There are ways to incentivize
Yeah.
the properties, so people who have an interest in historic preservation will move forward with those properties.
Yeah.
And we've done a very No offense to any staff or anything, but to this point, we've done a very poor job at that, and we need to do better. We need to seek out better options for that.
Well, typically, the incentives that usually come from the
I was going to
the
say, that would
government's
come from
money.
the
It's
dice.
coming, it's coming from the money out of somewhere.
Recommended maybe
Yeah,
by the staff, but that would come from the dais,
Yeah.
would it not?
yes, it would, yeah.
Oh,
And it would be money,
Come
it'd be
out of the budget.
taxpayers,
It'd be
taxpayers'
taxpayers'
monies.
money.
So-
You're waiving fees, you're waiving site plan fees, you're giving tax breaks on real estate. You're doing different things along those lines to incentivize development of commercial real estate and historic buildings. But unfortunately, most of these buildings have gotten to the point to where the rehabilitation of it is just, it's not there for the mere fact that you're having to pay $250 a foot to go ahead and strip everything off a building, including the bones, and then rebuild the building exactly how it is. Well, at that point, you're building the structure to look like the old structure, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're practically rebuilding the building to the most part, just like we had to do with this building here. I mean, that's not all what it was. We had to jack that sucker up and redo a lot of it. It's
Yeah,
at that
we
point,
spent-
it just becomes cost prohibitive. Now,
I'm
you
not
do have
sure-
some.
Go ahead.
You do have some folks like, for instance, in town, Haymarket Properties Group, who grabbed the building and did it. But they do it all themselves. They're an in-house contractor. If you find someone who's an in-house contractor to do things, that makes sense. As in, when we did these, we were the in-house contractor, and we contracted out to everybody and paid people by the hour, and we're able to slash a lot of the fluff in most of these bids. But that's because you have someone who wants to do it. And it all comes down to someone who wants to do it, and did we do the proper job of reaching out to folks to see if folks would be able or want that building to be able to rehab it. Unfortunately, when you have situations like we did across the street, you have an owner who's only going to sell it as a whole, and when you have a single building or multiple buildings that are sitting there, not many developers are wanting to come in and do that. They want the blank slate to be able to rebuild on, and then in 100 years from now, they'll say, this is now historic. We set a trend, and we now built something that we will never see, but in 100 years, they will say, that is a historic building that was built over 100 years ago, and X, Y, and Z, and how beautiful it may be.
If we continue on this trend, brick by brick, this town is going to disappear, and we're going to get swallowed up by Gainesville, and it's going to not be any different than going over to Gateway.
Well, I'm not sure that putting an incentive to it.
Okay, that's not what I'm talking
No,
about.
I just want to go back to
We're
that.
way off track here.
No, I'm just talking about the incentives, that by putting in incentives, I would think all but it maybe just one property owner that truly might needed an incentive to restore, but the other property owners that have these structures, they're not, I don't see them as needing a handout from the town
That's
to get
the
them.
issue, though, is that when we release them to other people, when we sell them, we don't have the control that we used to.
Well, it's
We
their
do.
properties.
It's
I mean,
called
look
through
at-
deed restriction. You're in real estate, deed restriction and
Hunter,
covenants.
please
Yeah.
don't always point out my occupation. I know what occupation I have.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
apologize.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I guess the point being with some of the structures, we could limit what they are going to look like. And so with that, we could sell them off, and just owning them to own them, I'm not in favor of that.
Disagree.
Yep, we would. With that, I'm not sure if we have any more discussion that needs to happen before our next council meeting. Any closing thoughts?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all for your time.